Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I like to discuss a report of the preliminary talks between members of the EU Council and EU Commission on possible moves to retaliate against the UK should Boris Johnson initiate a trade war. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So I've talked a bit recently about the possible action the EU could take against unilateral suspension of all or part of the Northern Ireland Protocol, but that has been speculative, as the EU haven't actually said anything publicly up until now. It's all been based on what the EU could do in theory, but we don't know what they want to do. But there was a report in the Financial Times that discussed a meeting between representatives of major EU members and Maros Sefcovic, who's the Deputy President of the Commission, but more specifically is the guy dealing with the negotiations over the Northern Ireland Protocol. The poor bugger. And according to the report, France, Germany, the Netherlands, Spain and Italy were all clear about the need for the Commission to prepare plans for robust retaliation. Oh, I thought, that's the first interesting piece of information, because these 5 nations represent a huge power bloc within the EU. And if they are all in agreement that action would need to be strong, that means we're not likely to see EU infighting over any trade war, at least nothing significant. Because let's be clear, the EU unity that we have seen over Brexit so far has been, smoothed over, facilitated definitely by mutual benefit. When we shot ourselves in the foot with our dishonest, hard Brexit, EU businesses gained. EU businesses can trade really easily around the single market. Of course they can, but British businesses can't. At a stroke, this extreme Tory Brexit kneecapped a load of British competition for these businesses, because British businesses now cannot compete on the same playing field as EU businesses in their own single market. Okay, but on the flip side, these EU businesses don't have the same trade barriers to export into Britain that British businesses do in the single market. So EU businesses can trade more easily in the British market than British businesses can trade in the EU market. What's that? As long as lorries can be found to deliver things, that is. There are some obstacles. It's not that they've got seamless trade. There's the VAT rules, for example. But the point is that the trade barriers for EU businesses in Britain are way lower than for British businesses in the EU. Plus, even if it were the same, even if everything were copied exactly in both directions, the single market is way bigger than the British market. So any trade barriers are rendered proportionally lower anyway. But a trade war might create more trade barriers. I mean, it wouldn't be a trade war if it didn't, would it? So the possibility existed for some EU member states to not really want to engage for the sake of the Republic of Ireland, as some may see it. There'll be some countries who wouldn't gain from this trade. Well, no one really gains from a trade war. They could suffer from this trade war, and they're thinking to themselves, well, we're not really gaining from the Northern Ireland Protocol. Is it really worth that much hassle? But if these 5 members are calling for strong action, that is not going to be the case. So in this article, which will be behind a paywall, so there's no point in me linking it for people moaning. If you've got access to it, you've already read it. I want to pick out 2 major things of interest. First are the 3 possible reactions that were discussed, and second is the language used by David Frost, our unelected Brexit minister, which actually leaves room for the trade war to be averted. So first of all, the possible reactions. According to the Financial Times, who talked to these representatives, the 3 options discussed were restricting access to electricity, placing tariffs on British goods, and terminating the Brexit agreement altogether. So let's go through each one and assess it for likelihood. I'm actually going to start with tariffs as it's the most obvious. I've already talked about how the Brexit deals permit the unilateral imposition of tariffs on British goods to compensate for any divergence from us, to say nothing of naughtiness on our part. So the EU want to act legally, of course, above all. Johnson thinks because he is willing to break the law, and indeed already is breaking international laws over Brexit, not just the Northern Ireland Protocol either, and the EU will not, that he has an advantage. But the EU still have enough legal options to hurt the UK if needed. The question is always going to be, will it hurt Johnson? Because that's what has to happen. Brexit is already hurting the UK. Johnson doesn't care if it hurts it more. In fact, he seems to thrive on our suffering. Conservatives went up in the polls last week, for goodness sake. We seem to have turned into a nation of masochists. I've only actually met 2 people that I've known to be masochists in my entire life, and now I seem to be surrounded by them. But the EU are really good at targeting tariffs to hurt influential political leaders. So they don't target the country so much as individual politicians. So that'll be interesting. The second option is restricting access to electricity. So, with everything else, the UK is dependent upon imports of energy from the EU as well as gas. France has already threatened to restrict access because we're not upholding our end of the bargain when it comes to fishing rights. The question with this one is, who will the public blame? The Tory press will blame the French. They've already started doing that. But if electricity is restricted and we have blackouts, who will the public blame? I'm not going to say that it doesn't matter how the media spin this, because it always does. But people will know that we've been very aggressive towards the EU. They will also know that we were told that we were in a strong position. If all of a sudden, as a result of Brexit, no matter who you blame, we're facing electricity blackouts, it might just dawn on people that maybe we're not in such a strong position as was said. You know, they will also know that we didn't have these battles before Brexit. None of this argy-bargy happened before Brexit. Electricity blackouts at the same time as critical shortages of food and drink could start to see people less concerned with whose fault this is and more concerned with what the government intend to do about it. You know, this has been my expectation at some point, that people will care more about what the government will do than who is to blame. You know, when we're talking about something that is affecting their day-to-day lives. People are prepared to be more philosophical about Brexit damage to someone else, not themselves. When they feel the pinch, they want something to be done. People don't like being pinched. It would be helpful if people got fed up sooner rather than later. This winter will be very, very interesting. I don't know what's going to happen. I know there's going to be a lot of pain. I do not know whether it will break the public, whether they will suddenly get sick of it. This winter could be very, very damaging to Boris Johnson, or he may end up shrugging it all off again. I have no idea. But that being said, there will be wider concerns about how it plays out to restrict access to energy in a country already struggling. You know, if it's seen as an overreaction in the EU itself, the French president obviously doesn't care what the Daily Mail says, but he will care about what the French public think. And if it's seen as an overreaction, it may be a step too far. So we'll have to see on that one. I don't know. The third option was just terminating the Brexit deal altogether. Now, I was really surprised to hear that this was discussed, because it sounds ridiculous to me. Like, if someone was, if a newspaper was just speculating what the EU could do, okay. You know, I mean, cast your minds back to spring. Last spring, after waiting as long as the EU Parliament could, they finally ratified the Trade and Cooperation Agreement. You know, they'd already delayed it due to Boris Johnson breaking the terms of the Northern Ireland Protocol. But when they ratified the deal, Johnson was still breaking the treaty. He hadn't gone back. He hadn't said, oh, yeah, sorry, yeah, we are going to implement it after all, promise. You know, he was still actively breaking the treaty. Why did they ratify it? They said it was because it would give the Commission the tools needed to retaliate against the UK. Tools that it has not yet employed, but in theory could. Now, after ratifying the deal despite Johnson breaking the previous Brexit deal, why would the EU terminate it because he's breaking the previous Brexit deal? Makes no sense. It would also be giving the Brexiteers and the Conservative Party what they really want, a no-deal Brexit that they can blame on the EU because, like, well, the EU have torn up the treaty. We didn't do it. They would remain blameless and all the damage could be blamed on the EU. Yes, the EU won't necessarily care about that. Like I said, they don't care about how things play in the British press, although I think sometimes they maybe should when it comes to negotiations. But they don't. The agreement does allow for individual elements of the agreement to be terminated. It does also allow, as far as I could tell, for the whole thing to be terminated if one party breaches essential elements of it. But this is the UK breaching parts of the withdrawal agreement. I don't think there's an argument that the UK has breached parts of the Trade and Cooperation Agreement, although there will be some crossover. But I don't know. I could easily have missed it. It's a big treaty, and I'm not legally trained. But whether the EU can terminate the entire thing or not, I just don't understand why they would. The Trade and Cooperation Agreement is working very much in their favour right now. Yes, terminating it would mean tariffs being slapped on British exports in the EU. That would be, if they wanted to give us a short, sharp shock, not that it would be all that short, to our economy, to really jolt the public into action against our government, absolutely suspending the whole Brexit deal would be the way to do it. I get that. There'd be quotas on things as well. It's not just tariffs. But much more severe than the proportionate tariffs that can be placed without terminating the agreement. But it would also hurt EU businesses as well. Or maybe they think it won't. Or maybe it won't. Because the thing is, ordinarily we'd say in a trade war, the way it normally works is one side slaps tariffs on your goods, you slap tariffs on theirs. We're going to slap tariffs on theirs, are we? Because the problem is we haven't installed checks on EU imports. Customs, SPS, things like that. They don't apply. Because we can't. We haven't got the facilities to do it. So how are we going to slap trade barriers? And the reason why we haven't put those things in place, by the way, make no mistake, is because we cannot afford to restrict access to EU imports. We're desperate for them. So are we really going to place trade barriers on them when we already haven't done? We haven't even placed the trade barriers that we are legally required to place on them. Are we really going to put more on? You know, but so I can see the logic there that it's like, well, we could put more trade barriers on your goods, but you can't put them on ours because you're too desperate. I can get that logic, but I'd still say I was surprised that this was discussed this early on. Finally, it's also worth noting the article pointed out that David Frost did say that the issue of the European courts, which is the latest thing that he's complaining about, is not a red line for the UK. You know, in other words, Frost is giving himself the room necessary to accept the EU's recent proposals on the Northern Ireland Protocol. He could easily sell it as a big win. Indeed, it is really. It represents a massive improvement on the terms of the protocol as they existed at the start of this year, and without the UK even needing to agree to anything in return. You know, if I was to actually get to interview David Frost and say, you know, it wouldn't be possible for me to question him in a way where he'd have to admit to any concessions on his part, because there aren't any. You know, if the wider Conservative Party will accept them, Frost can absolutely claim it as a big win. And I don't mean in the usual way that they say things like they suffer a defeat and claim it as a win anyway. I mean, genuinely. You know, he could calm things down, get the protocol working properly without the antagonism that has overshadowed it so far. These moves from the EU are huge. But the question is, will the hardline Brexiteers and the Conservative Party accept it? Because that's what I don't know. Really, honestly don't know. I do know that they want the protocol dropped, and I can understand that there are various motivations for them wanting it dropped. But Frost's wording suggests that they might, because after all, why deny that it's a red line if he was 100% committed to abolishing the protocol altogether? You know, if he knew that the hardliners in the party will not accept it, why didn't he just go, yeah, it's an absolute red line, this? Why did he not say that? And if they will accept it, no difficulty selling this to anyone, quite frankly. They'll sell it to wider Brexit supporters easy. As I say, they've sold defeats as victories to those guys, but they can sell it to everyone else as well. Everyone will be happy with this. I'll be happy with it. It'll calm the whole thing down. Northern Irish businesses will be by and large happy with it. These proposals from the EU came about as a result of talking to Irish businesses, Northern Irish businesses. And the EU don't care, as I say, how things are presented in the British press, as long as they get what they want. But these discussions can carry on for some time. Frost has not as yet attempted to suspend the protocol. When he does, the treaty states that there has to be 30 days of talks before anything happens. It's not, you don't get to suspend the protocol. It's like you have to have 30 days of talks first. When those 4 weeks basically expire without agreement, nothing to say the EU have to react immediately. They could spend a week. So even if Frost does initiate this trade war, and it doesn't seem to be imminent, you know, if anything, the rhetoric's been scaled back, there would still be a good 5 or 6 weeks before the EU had to do anything. But it is entirely possible that the heat has, as I said, been dialed down on the prospect of a trade war. Yet again, if the EU are discussing strong action should one occur, and the UK have something that they can sell as a massive victory, what is the sense in us starting a conflict? A trade war can only happen now if the lunatics start one over nothing more than blind ideology. As crazy as many Tory MPs are, surely a majority are a bit more practical than that. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. If you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.